Okay, so we've got two DSs here, this one and this one. And we're gonna put capture cards in them. Let me turn up the ISO on this so it's easier to see. Or, yeah, that's gonna need to be ISO. That's probably good. Okay. So what we need to do is take them apart. We're going to do some soldering and then put the capture board in and then put it back together. And we'll see if it works. So just to show that they work the first time so that I don't look like an idiot later. It's working. And then second one also working. Cool. Okay. I'll do the red one first. And open this up. So there's basically just two bits that I need out of here. One is like a cross bit, and then the other one is the Y bit. So I'll put this off to the side. I need more like storage space or something. And I need the Y bit first, or sorry, cross bit first and then the Y bit. Loving the colors, yeah. The colors of the DSs are nice. Also, I've never seen this one before. It's got a silver back and a red top. I've seen the red and I have a red and black one, but I've never seen the red and silver. I'm interested in what the silver on silver looks like, but yeah. So take the battery door off, take the battery out. That's a very typical procedure that you would do. Everything past year is a bit atypical. So battery off to the side, and then we have to switch bits to the Y bit, and we'll take all of those out. So there's 6 of them that we have to take out. I've already modified the DS for the spot that we need to get the capture board connected, like the USB-C port. So I'll show that in a minute. That requires taking out a couple of screws that don't go back in. And it's probably better if I maybe zoom in a little bit and also hold it on an angle. And one more. So generally my strategy with these has been to get DSs that like are perfectly functional but cosmetically like, you know, maybe not in the most amazing condition. And the main reason for that is like these don't really need to be collector's items. Like they are, yeah, they're like used for capture boarding, and you don't really need perfect screens and everything, even though like you need, it's handy to be able to see them and stuff. But yeah, so just getting DSs that are perfectly functional but maybe look a little bit less desirable. So in order to save people money and just like use DSs that may not be used otherwise. So what we do first is we're taking out ribbon cables. So we take out this LCD cable, and then we've got Goosey T, welcome in, welcome in. Are you shiny hunting anything, or are you interested in hardware things? So we are taking out the digitizer and the backlight cables here. Just carefully walking these back out. Oh, that's your partner. Nice. And then the next one, we've got 5. So these 3 are free. And then we do the Wi-Fi card over here, this antenna's free. And then we've got this last ribbon cable over here. And I'm just going to undo the latch, and then we'll get it out as we pull the main board out. So I need the actual screwdriver, would be helpful. Expert at work. Yeah, I've done, I think, 10 of these now, so this is a pretty comfortable thing at this point. I say that as I'm doing it live. So there's 4 screws that we have to take out, and the main board comes right out. And the trigger buttons are just kind of sandwiched in there, so they might come out, but they're really easy to get back in. And then, so this ribbon cable hasn't come out yet, so I'm just going to hold it as I pull the main board out so that it comes out with separately. And we lost one of the triggers, but that's not a big deal. I'm going to take both of them out actually and just put them over here. Okay, so this is everything, like 2 screens, buttons, and speakers and everything else. And then this is the main board, and this is all we need for now. So we'll put this off to the side, and I'll do the other one and get it to this point, and then we'll do some soldering. Goose is nice to you and feeds you almonds? Nice. I don't know that I'm familiar with the almonds joke, even though I've spent plenty of time in your stream, Sploosh and Kira. I did see it on the Redemptions. I just don't know what it means. Do you just really like almonds? Okay, so battery out. Put that off to the side here. And then we need the Y bit. Sploosh keeps saying Kira locked in a closet, or keeps Kira locked in a closet and pays her to mod in almonds. Man, that sounds kind of questionable, but I won't report you to Twitch. It is the life. He gives you a blanket sometimes. Oh, well, that's nice. That's nice of him. Okay, so we take these 6 screws out, and I got one more. And then, yeah, done the same thing. I'll just show you this now, I guess. So I had to make some modifications, and I've already done that. So this is basically the USB-C port. I'll get it to focus, or just manually do it. There we go. USB-C port here. And then I had to modify some of the case here, and that's like standard in order to fit the capture card. So I've done that on both, and I'll show you what it looks like normally, which is like this. So we've basically taken out 2 screws, the one on this side and then the one that comes through the other side, and then we've cut away some of the case, and that helps to fit the capture board, which is right here. So this capture board, I'll just show you how it fits in here. It'll be adhered to the main portion of the DS, but it fits right in this area here, and in order to get it to sit flush, you had to cut away a bunch of the case here. So sometimes, quote unquote, yeah. Okay, so I'll put these off to the side, and then we'll do this. So again, 3 things on this side, this ribbon cable, and then these 2 here underneath. That was the bottom LCD, and then the digitizer and the backlight here separately. Okay, that one, and then this one. And if people have any questions, feel free to ask. I've done this a bunch on stream already, which I feel like, you know, some people here have seen this a bunch of times, but even if you've seen it a few times, if you have new questions, feel free to ask them, and I'm happy to answer them. That's part of the reason that I'm doing this. Nyanobytes. This is such a cool thing to stream. It's amazing to watch. Thank you. I appreciate it. I have fun doing it, and welcome in. Thank you. Sometimes he just takes it for yourself. Oh. Okay, so we take out the 4 screws, and then we will take the main board out, and we gotta watch this ribbon cable. It's easier to get out as the main board's coming out, but just have to make sure we don't tear it. Have you figured out when you're doing the? Have I figured out when I'm doing the 3ds capture card installation stream? It's either going to be Saturday or Sunday. Like I have a ton. I have a ton of I have a whole stack of 3DSs, and I have more capture cards. I have like 13 3DSs, and I have 7 more coming. I'm going to do about 20 of them and maybe see how that goes, and then maybe call it quits after that. I'm not looking to get into the capture card installation business, even though that may sound like otherwise. I'm mainly using them for like getting people to watch hardware stuff, and also on my stream, and then also for networking and stuff with people. So okay, so just make sure that we let everything go free. And so again, this is everything except the main board. So it's the buttons, the 2 screens, top and bottom, and then triggers and Wi-Fi antenna and stuff. So you can open it up and you can see it's basically the whole rest of the DS. Okay, so that's off to the side, and then we're gonna do some soldering. Exciting. Yeah, I mean, it's just an investment, a brief investment. If I put them on eBay, they'll go in 2 seconds because I'm not selling them for a ridiculous amount. The 3DSs will be, including the 3DS, somewhere between $350 and $400, and that is undercutting the market by far on purpose because they shouldn't cost that much, and also I'm not looking to make big money on them. I just want to get my time, like money for my time back, basically. And I'm not doing any kind of, like, currently I'm not planning to do any kind of commission, so it's not a case of like send in your 3DS. It's a case of like I source the 3DS, I install the capture card, and then I send it out. So same thing with the regular DSs. I'll consider it, so you can message me, but if there's a good reason for it. Okay, so this is the ribbon cable that we've got to solder, and this basically connects all of the points that need to be connected to the capture card, which will be connected to this ribbon cable. And it's like a really nice template, so you can see as soon as all of the points are aligned, everything in there is silver. Let me see if I can get it aligned. There we go. So it's slightly winking, and then everything is aligned. There we go. And all the solder points are ready. So I'm going to tape this down, and then we'll get soldering. I'll turn on the soldering iron while I do that. Okay, so I'll zoom out for a second while I do this. Okay, so soldering iron is over here. You can see it. And I'll turn it on, and then we've got solder here, and I'll tape this down really quick. Yeah, the 3DS portion, as long as I can get, I'm gonna do a practice run of like recording it, because it's a lot more difficult to show the interesting parts because it's very small. So I'm gonna make sure that my camera picks it up and that I know where to put my hands, I guess. Okay, so I'm gonna take this tape here and align all of the points, and then okay, and then tape over the top. Double check that it's all aligned. Okay, that's pretty good. Just look at this one more time off screen. I'm just gonna realign it just a little bit. Okay. That's a little bit better. Easier to see up here. Okay, and then I'll zoom in again. And I can see some of the soldering here. Just realized that Saturday is 16 months on T. Nice. That's awesome. I'm excited for you. I'm really excited for you. That's so cool. That's really cool. I'm on like I just finished month 1 of adding progesterone, and it's been kind of a wild ride with that, and like surprising differences, I guess. So that's been cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically tack down this side and then tack down this side so that the ribbon cable can't move anymore, and then we'll start soldering inwards, and then we'll remove the tape, basically. And I'll put this over here for now. Yeah, it's amazing what the hormones can do. It's just like a single chemical can tell your body to do totally different things. And then basically what I do, I'll do the other one over here, and then I'll check it whether it lifted or not. I basically check for lifting mechanically. Oops. And then and that kind of gives an indication for whether it's been soldered properly. Because you think about it like candy on glass is the analogy that I give. Like if you have stuck candy on glass, it can just like, if you scrape at it, it'll just pop right off. That's kind of what can happen with solder joints, and they're called cold solder joints. So you just want to make sure that they're well connected, and this is like one way to do it mechanically. So just taking some tweezers underneath and making sure that it doesn't lift or anything, and that looks pretty good. So we'll just keep soldering. And this ribbon cable is really nice from a template perspective. It just like makes things so easy compared to like typically you end up using like a bunch of wires. That's not the cleanest joint there. There we go. A bunch of wires to do this. Come on. I didn't tin the tip. That's part of the problem. This is kind of a messy job here. Not my best showing, but it'll work just fine. And I got it. I fixed it. So I'm just going to tin the tip here so that we clean it off, and it'll work a little bit better. Sir Blackfry, welcome in. Welcome in. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going with soldering points here. So you know nothing about soldering, but do you have to worry about burning the ribbon cable with the soldering iron? No, it's like coated in a really heat resistant material. It's similar, if not the same, as this Kapton tape. The Kapton tape is basically space grade material, so there's really no issue with burning it. It's like a really high temperature plastic that's coated there, or coating the actual ribbon stuff. So no reason to worry about burning it. So I'm just kind of using the ribbon cable as like a little support, and then I just move off of it, and it works really well for this. Okay, so that's all the points on that side of the tape, and then I'll do all the other ones on the other side, and then we'll do the last 5 that are underneath. Touch the liquid metal. Yeah, totally. Intrusive thoughts are no joke. Intrusive thoughts are no joke. Yeah. And people who like, it can sound like OCD can sound very normal, and like intrusive thoughts are something that happens to everybody, so it can be very like a case of like, oh hey, everybody gets intrusive thoughts kind of thing, because it's typically like, hey, if I like drove off the road right now, what would happen? It's like, that kind of thing. But like somebody with OCD can end up obsessing over that thought and can't get it out of their head, kind of thing. Even though they may never do that kind of thing, but it's no joke, intrusive thoughts. So you've actually burned yourself using a soldering iron, but it was for a stained glass project. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, not the part where you burned yourself, but the stained glass is neat. I've seen that done before. I didn't know that they actually use soldering until I had watched one of them, but it's really cool that they do that. So I'm just peeling off the tape, and then we'll finish up the soldering underneath it. Just careful not to rip the ribbon cable, and then pull it off here. And we got 5 more points there, and then 2 more that we have to do after we fold the ribbon cable. So. Okay, so I think that's all of them there. I'm gonna just do a quick run through with the tweezers and just check for lifting in a couple places. And I'm just gonna take a closer look at the board really quick. Okay, looks pretty good. They got the best of you one time and they told you to stick your finger in a light socket, so you did. Yeah, that's unfortunate that can happen, but yeah, it's very serious stuff. So I definitely appreciate that is something that is very difficult to control at times. Okay, so this is a really handy thing. Normally these things have to be done with a ton of tiny wires, and this, because it's like all on one plane, or even if it wasn't, the people who design these things will typically create ribbon cables for it, and this is a clever design where you fold the ribbon cable and then it grabs the last 2 points here. And the ones that we need to grab are these 2. So I'm going to fold it, and then I'll put another piece of tape to hold it in place, and then we'll solder those 2 points, and then we'll start the next board, and then we'll do some reassembly. Yeah, I think there's like some like streaming service shows that also have stained glass. I like hesitate to say Netflix because I'm kind of upset with Netflix, but I know that there's some on there. I'll just check for lifting at these 2 points, and then I think we're done with this board. Okay. Good enough. How did I learn how to install capture cards? Well, if you start at like, I don't know, somewhere between 8 and 10, taking apart laptops and computers and anything you can get your hands on, you can end up like me, kids. But in terms of soldering, I can't remember the first soldering project that I did, but basically like, for this kind of thing, I just follow the directions. Like Loopy's directions are pretty good, but for practicing soldering, let me see. I've mentioned this a couple of times, so I'm going to see if I can grab the stuff that I use to practice, because that can be very useful for people, I feel like. So I'll run for 2 seconds, more than 2 seconds, but less than a minute basically. And I'll try and grab my practice stuff to show you. Okay, I hope people are still here. So we're going to do soldering 101 as part of this. I'll show you exactly how to learn to solder. So let me put this off to the side. This one's basically done. We'll do the second one after this. I've been wanting to show this, so thank you for asking, Sir Blackfry. So this is how I would teach people to solder, and I've done it a couple times, and I've been very happy with the soldering that was done by those folks. So this is a bread. These are the things that you need. If you want to learn to solder, you need a few things. One, zoom out just a little bit more. A soldering iron. 2, probably a breadboard. They're super cheap. 3, some solder. This is called a perf board. It is just a piece of fiberglass with copper-coated holes on one side. And then these pins. And what I would recommend doing is basically cut the pins so that, there's enough, like typically they come in really long rows unless this one is too long to actually fit in. So you can see that like I have to basically break this off, but they're really easy to break off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it off to the same length as this one. And then I'm going to shove them right in the breadboard like this. And then put your perf board on top of it. And let me zoom in so you can see this. So ignore the rest of the stuff that's on the breadboard. That's part of another project. But so we have these pins sticking through the perf board, and the perf board is just has copper. They're called vias or vias, and we're basically just going to solder along this row. And let me zoom in enough so that y'all can see it. Yeah, that's pretty good, I guess. Okay, so take your soldering iron and then tin the tip. So you just put some solder on the tip and then you wipe it in your little tray here. Clean. And then we'll just go from each one to each one here. So you want to heat up the via and the pin. So you put soldering iron touching both, and then on the other side basically put solder in, leave it for a second and let go. And that I think is a pretty good solder joint. You can see that like there's not too much solder. I'll put too much solder on the next one basically, but that's a pretty good solder joint and it's mechanically sound. Like that's not going to come off basically at that point. So I'll put too much solder on the next one. Here we go. That's not even too much. I'll show you too much solder in a second, but let me show you bridged points first. So, come on. They don't want to bridge. Okay, so if you put way too much solder, then you can end up bridging 2 points, basically. So this would be an electrical short. So you don't want to do this. And we can fix that using the solder wick stuff, which basically is just a copper braid that absorbs solder. So you heat the wick up and it'll take up all that extra solder. And then we can fix the problem here. Assuming that it works. Last time it didn't. There we go. Okay. So that kind of soaked up all the extra solder there. And so, like, you just keep doing this over and over again. We're just soldering pins to a perf board. And if you can get consistent at it, then you can do anything. I would recommend doing this for an hour. And then you will walk away with a new skill and be confident with soldering. You get an idea for the timing, the amount of solder, when to put the solder in, when to take the iron off, and these kind of things. And this is you can't mess anything up basically. Like this all costs very little except the soldering iron, which like you end up reusing, but everything here super cheap. Super cheap, and you can learn to solder for very little money. And I've taught like multiple people to solder this way, and I've been like happy with the way that they've soldered like my own stuff enough to like trust them with my own stuff. So I can like confirm that both like me learning to solder this way worked, and also that like I think it works for other people enough that I'm like happy to teach somebody this way and then trust them that they're gonna do a good job. So we just go pin to pin. Same thing. You'll see me doing this on the capture boards. Same thing, basically. And we're getting some solder on the adjacent pins, or adjacent vias. But usually you won't have this problem because they won't be this close together. But you can also practice not getting the solder there because that's also important in some cases. So just pin to pin, pin to pin. And I'll finish these out, and then we'll do the other side, and then I'll pull it out and show you that it's... So there's another one that bridged, and we can take our solder wick and heat it up and fix that bridging there. Oops, best to turn it. There we go. Probably need a little bit more. The solder wick gets really hot, so you gotta be careful with it. Okay. So we'll finish this up. Dropped in at the best time. Yeah, we're learning how to solder. I don't know that this is gonna stick for anybody, but if anybody's interested, like this, I would recommend this as like a first way to practice soldering and like get good at timing and everything for it. And basically the amount of heat that you need, because you don't want to put the soldering iron on what you're soldering for too long either, because you can damage it. So you basically want to do it as quickly as possible without heating it up too much, essentially. So you get an idea for like how long does it take to get the soldering iron to heat up the via and the pin together, and then how much solder should you put in, and when should you take the iron off. And I feel like it's very natural. It's a very natural way to learn to solder because you can kind of just like figure it out as you go, because you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And this is kind of messy because I've like coated the vias next to it and these solder joints. You can see that they're relatively inconsistent here. Some solder, not enough solder on the ones that we pulled off with the wick, and maybe a little bit too much on this one and the one next to it. So, you know, those will be electrically totally fine, but if I were doing this for any kind of show, or like if I were doing this except to show like the process, I would do a better job with it. So we'll do the same thing on the other side. This is also like not the best way to, like normally I'm like sitting closer to the soldering, which is maybe not the best thing from a fumes perspective, but normally you want to have really good ventilation and ideally some kind of like little fan and stuff for it. Should probably be taking my glasses off for this too, because I'm farsighted. And like as I've gotten older, I've definitely like, this is not the best showing. I need to tin the tip again. Tinning the tip basically removes any of the oxidation on it. And it's just like adding solder to it and then wiping it off again. And the joints are a lot cleaner when you do that, and they're faster. So you also get a sense for how often you need to clean the soldering iron too. And honestly, like I'm really not doing my best work here. Like I'm just kind of showing how to do it a bit. Did I draw the Marie myself, or did I use a template? So I grabbed some frames from the anime and used those as like a bit of a template. But it's not like perfectly aligned with it because I couldn't get exactly what I needed from it. So I grabbed a couple frames from the anime, and there's like a nice add layer as background as reference, and that when you do that, add a reference layer with your background, that can be at a different pixel count than the rest of the layers, and that's very handy. So you can have the highest resolution image you want as like a template in the back, and then you can do your canvas can be, you know, like 8 pixel by 8 pixel. So anyway, okay, so I could clean this up more, but here is our soldered board. It does absolutely nothing, but it taught us something about soldering, hopefully. This, aside from the soldering iron, all of this would cost you $10 maximum. So, and this is like a little bit overkill for what you actually need, but I would recommend this because it'll teach you to solder like pretty well. So anyway, yeah, the flux definitely helps a lot. So yeah, I just don't want to mess up the breadboard mainly, but yeah, flux definitely helps a lot for the smaller stuff especially. But yeah, anyway, I'll probably do that again. Thanks for asking that question, Sir Blackfry. I've been meaning to do this for a while, actually. I'm kind of embarrassed by that soldering job, honestly, in comparison to what I'm doing on these DSs, so know that I'm putting a lot more care into these than I was into the soldering that we just did. I was kind of trying to show that it's like a bit more foolproof than you think it is, and also just like what soldering may look like for somebody who's never soldered before. Okay, so we are going to tape this down. How much is which tool? The soldering iron or which? Soldering irons you can pick up like, what I would recommend is finding one with a really small tip. And like some of them, you can't really like change the tip out for anything smaller. I don't know if I can get it to focus. Like something really small, basically. Like here's my pinky. Like you want a really small tip essentially for stuff that you're soldering if it's like fine stuff, and especially if you're doing like a capture card or something, you want a really fine tip. So typically like you can spend somewhere between $30 and $100. $30 will get you something that works just fine. $100 will get you something that like has more tips and like is more accurate from a temperature perspective and stuff. But you can find stuff in between. You can find nice ones that are a little bit more hacky. There's some that like hook up to a different kind of power supply that can be done for cheaper that are really nice. But there's no reason to be doing the hacky stuff. I would just pick something up, probably not from Home Depot. I haven't seen any soldering irons there that really have the smaller tips, but I could be wrong, especially because a lot of the electronics stores are closing. So we're again aligning the template of the ribbon cable, and you can see as soon as everything's aligned, like you see silver through all of them. So that's kind of the idea, and I'll tape this down and then I'll put it back and we'll solder it. And again, like soldering is all about patience because it's very, especially with these small things, it's very easy to mess everything up. Like there's components that are already soldered to the board here that like if we knock them loose, we might damage them or destroy them, or at the very least they're disconnected. Then we have to figure out how to reconnect them. So that's another level of practice, and that's why I like those soldering those pins to the perf board. Can teach you a bit about like, you know, this is how far I need to stay away from other pins with the soldering iron. This is the angle I should be working at. I would just solder like an entire board full of pins, and you'll see some of the interesting things that happen once you get like to the center of the board and stuff. So I make it look so easy. After you've been doing it for a while, like I'm pretty relaxed about it. That's why I'm doing it on stream. Like the 3DS stuff, we'll see how it goes when it comes to like doing it on stream. It may be a case of like I'll do a bit of it and then stop. Like if I'm nervous about it, I'm gonna stop. I'm not gonna like mess it up on stream. So like the stuff that I'm familiar with and confident with, I can appear like I'm not nervous and stuff, and I can make it look easy, but and it can get to a place where it's easy. So like it just takes practice, and like if y'all remember anything, like if you want to learn to solder, that's one way to solder. So other people are going to tell you differently. That's the way that, like, if you want to install a capture card, I think like if you spent an afternoon doing those pins and like learning the ins and outs of it, you could get to a place where this would be attainable, kind of thing. I would probably recommend both like taking your time, and if you feel like you're out of your depth with it, then stop and like ask questions about it, because it, like, you don't want to have your first project be a disappointment. You want to have it be a success. So this is something that I would recommend at an intermediate level. And like there's other kits and stuff that if you can find something that you think is cool to build, then you can get a kit that requires soldering to do something interesting. And then step down to something smaller like this. Like this is pretty small, I would say. It's also nice when everything is unsoldered, and then you learn to solder everything and then see it working when it's all connected. That's cool too. Like a circuit that, they teach you to build and then work on and stuff, and you put it together and all of a sudden it's working. It's similar to this, but for the like more beginner stuff, can definitely be very satisfying to do. Even like a kit that like you think is like made for kids, or is like explicitly made for kids. Sometimes those are really fun to do. My like brass sponge is getting really dirty. Oops, sorry. Okay, so we're gonna finish this up and then we'll do reassembly. I've got like basically 10 or 15 more to solder, and I'll kind of go quickly through it. That one didn't get enough. Okay. So that's all the ones that are not under the tape. I'm just going to heat this one up one more time. Okay. And then I'll pull the tape off and we'll solder those last 9. The other thing is that, like, to fix a mistake, like some of these really really fine micro soldered components, if I were to get it to a place where like a component that has 6 pins on it, all of those solder joints heated up and the component moved, it'd probably be pretty difficult for me to feel confident putting it back on without some other tools. So it's definitely a case of like being very careful. I'm just going to check these for lifting around these like components that are already soldered to the board, because it doesn't matter how perfect your solder joints are if you mess up some of the soldering that's already there. And I've definitely done that before when I was younger, doing projects that were a little bit too ambitious. Okay, so I'm going to fold this portion of the ribbon cable over to grab these last 2 points. And then I'll tape it down and we'll get those last 2. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to look at the solder joints a little bit more closely while I take this tape off, and then we'll start reassembly. Okay. Alright, I'm going to wash my hands really quick, and I'll be back and we'll reassemble these, and it shouldn't take too long to do that, and then we'll test the cap cards, and assuming they work, we'll get back to shiny hunting if that's what people would like to do. Be right back. Unmute. Be right back. Okay. Cool. So now we can start reassembly. Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll do the red one first, and then I'll do the blue one. So now we flip it back over, and we have this extra ribbon cable that we plug into the capture card, but otherwise it all goes back together the same. And we want to make sure that these ribbon cables come back through the hole in the main board. So just kind of use the tweezers to get them through. And that's good. And then we want to make sure that the Wi-Fi antenna cable stays on top here. And we also need to make sure that the triggers go in, because they're kind of sandwiched between the main board and stuff. So this is the right trigger, that makes sense. Okay. And then the left trigger. Do I get the hardware from Loopy, or do you make them or find them online? Yeah, so I get the capture card and the ribbon cable from Loopy directly, and then I just source the DSs myself. So yeah. Yeah, he said he shouldn't run out anytime soon, so if people feel like trying it out themselves, it's definitely like possible to buy a DS and a capture card separately. I would not recommend starting with your favorite childhood DS for this thing, because you may very well end up with something that's not working at the end. I would start with a DS that you care a little bit less about first. Maybe your friend's childhood DS by chance. Your friend that you don't like very much. Okay, I'm gonna like pre-bend this cable a little bit just to make it easier to install, and then I'll get this one in first over here. I'll show more detail this on the other side. They're very similar, all the ribbon cables. This one's just a little bit tricky to get in, so, and it's harder to see in general, so I'll just get it in and then We'll do the other ones more closely. All right, pick this up. Okay. And I'll put the screws in right after this one to make it a little bit easier. Okay, that's in, and then grab the screws. So there's 4 screws that we have to put in. And the last one. Let me see if I can show this. This is like a good lesson for folks if you don't know this. So I'm going to see if I can show it. It's going to be hard to see, but should probably use a larger prop. And maybe this isn't the right screw. Okay, never mind. I'll show it another time, I think. Yeah, I'll show it another time. Okay, so the screws are back in. You can do the Wi-Fi antenna. And then we'll do these guys over here, which basically, let me just zoom in. So these ribbon cables, there's like a little reinforcement that you want to make sure meets the line, essentially. And then you can push the locking mechanism in. And you can see the difference between the one next to it and this one in terms of the locking mechanism getting pushed in and not. So put this ribbon cable into the one next to it. Oops. Slide it in. Make sure that it meets this line, that little reinforcement meets the line, and then we can push the locking mechanism in. It's all good. And then we'll make sure this little locking latch is up, and then push the ribbon cable into here gently. Make sure that the line lines up, and then close the latch. So that's everything except the capture board itself. So we've got the ribbon cable for that. So we're going to break out the capture board here and this one. Break out the capture board and then we'll put it on here. So the capture board looks like this. It's got another ribbon cable socket with a latch and then adhesive on the back here. So we'll pull this off. And then you want to align the capture board with the corner of this Wi-Fi card, essentially, like right there, basically. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll plug in the ribbon cable. It looks pretty good. Set the line, if it'll focus, and now we can go ahead and put on the back, basically. And where's my little cable? I basically just use this little cable to align the USB-C as it's going in. Oops, let me zoom out. So I have this little just random short cable that I use to shove in here. And then we'll put the other screws in and it's done. And then we'll do the second one real quick. So swap to the Y bit and then we'll put all those in. I hope that at the end of all these capture card installs that somebody ends up trying to do one. Don't like go out of your comfort zone with it, but like it would be cool. I don't want to be a capture card installer. If anybody wants to be, then if you learn anything here, that would be cool. Or if you do some other kind of soldering project that you think is cool, just let me know. Because like doing some of the hardware stuff, I just want more people to do hardware things in general. It's stuff that like people don't really do as much anymore, so understanding how things work is a big deal. So we put the battery in, all the screws are in. All right. So that one's done, and we'll just do them, well, let's just see if this one works, I guess, while we're here. Let me just I'll close all these, and then I'll open the one that is on the screen. Okay, and desktop, capture 2, okay, and show this, okay, yeah, that's the right one. Okay, so let me just plug this in. And we got charge light, turn it on, white light, both screens appear to be working. Capture not happening, but I think that's because there's a bunch of DSs plugged in, unfortunately. Let's see. There we go. all sorts of strange things happen when you have like 5 capture cards plugged in. So this appears to be working. My favorite color is purple. How much does it cost to get and install a capture card on a Switch Lite? I don't know that it's Switch Lite. Oops. I don't know that Switch Lite has capture cards. Yeah, I would recommend buying a Switch instead. as a cheaper alternative. It's basically like, I don't think that I would be surprised if they make them, because it would be hard to compete with the cost of like just the difference in cost of a Switch and the like convenience of it. So how do you get the PC to run more than one? You and Kelvin had problems getting 3 to work. Yeah, it depends on, like, you have to look at the different USB ports, because sometimes there's too much power draw, so you can get like an external USB adapter that like a powered USB adapter, basically, that doesn't rely on the motherboard power. What time is it here? 17:45. Or 19:45. Yeah, that's right. Okay. And then no birthday. Cool. So it'll shut down, and then we'll turn it back on, and it's all set up, and we'll play some games with it. So that's one, and we'll do the next one real quick. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I would recommend like selling your Switch Lite and getting a regular Switch. That's what I would recommend. It's possible that somebody might make a capture board for it. Like, it's definitely possible to make one. I doubt that anyone has made one, because I don't think that there's any money in it, because of the things that I talked about. It's basically like, it's impossible to compete with like just the price, the raw price of like what a Switch costs. The difference in price is so little. And you can find used Switches for a pretty good price now, I would say. So I lost one of the triggers. I'll get that back installed. Yeah. The Switch Lite is kind of handy from its size perspective. The colors are nice, but honestly, like, it's kind of worse in every way. I bought one for family member at one point, and we ended up just trading it, or like selling it, and then buying a regular Switch. I know that maybe like some people really like it, but like we found it to be worse in every way. Like battery life, the screen is smaller, like, you know, like you can't plug it into the TV, all these kind of things, that it just made it so much more worth it to get a Switch. The light does not. Yep. You have a Sword Shield Edition light, but use it as a display on your shelf. Yeah, totally. How about a 3DS? Yeah, so I'm doing 3DS capture cards, Dasuke, next stream. Not next stream, not like directly next stream, but this weekend, most likely. So if you're interested in that, you can watch me do that. So I'm doing 3 new 3DS XLs. They're Japanese, so they're region locked, but I'm installing custom firmware on them, and they won't be region locked, so you can play any game in them, any game cartridge, and then I'll be selling them afterwards. And it's going to be somewhere between $350 and $400, I think. I need to like finalize the pricing on it, but that should be very competitive relative to anywhere else you can get them. And if you know anywhere that you can get them cheaper, then let me know, because I would like to undercut the cheapest place that you can get them, because I don't plan to do this long term, and I want to drive the market down, basically, if I can, for whatever period of time that I'm doing it. These things don't need to be this expensive. People are gouging everybody on them. Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Magical Hobo, for contributing to the baking stream, which apparently is very popular. Channel point redemption here. So I'm just doing the rest of the ribbon cables here, and this one is like a little finicky. So just get it in. Okay. Okay, so that one's lined up with the line. I'll show that again in a second, but that one's good. Plug the Wi-Fi card antenna in, and I can zoom in on this. So we've got the little Wi-Fi card antenna sticking out here, and we plug that in. And I'll put the screws in now, basically. Just 4 screws. Camera quality is insane. Yeah, so I have a couple cameras. One that I had from a long time ago when I used to do more photography stuff, and then the other one that I got as a webcam for when we started doing all this work from home stuff. So it's basically like the combination of the two helps a lot. It's like I've acquired a bunch of stuff that's very handy for streaming, essentially, by chance. And the rest of it I've kind of bootstrapped. Like I got green screens, like if you want a green screen, go on Craigslist or Facebook or wherever is local for you next door. People are selling them because there's fewer people working from home. I got one real cheap and they work really well if you like the vibe of a green screen. Some people don't, but for me, I like it. Okay, last screw on the main board. So that's the 4 of them, and we still have the capture board ribbon cable, which we'll do in a second, and then these 3 here. So I'll zoom in on this. And then do these. So this one. Push it in, and then this one. Come on. Strange. I'm just going to take a quick closer look at this one. It appears to not be going in as far as it should, so I'm trying to figure out why that is. Because last time that happened, I ended up putting it together and then we had to take it back apart. Sometimes there's manufacturing defects that like mean that the DS still functions fine, but it may not look like it's together properly, even if it is. Okay. So we've got these 2 ribbon cables in underneath, and then we'll do this one here. I'm not modding any ones that people already own. I'm only buying them myself and then selling them. It would, yeah, that's like my default stance, and I don't know what would make me reconsider that, but I'm definitely like preferably not in the like ship your 3DS to me business, which may not make sense to folks, but it works better for me because I don't want to have to coordinate. Like if somebody sends me their 3DS and it isn't packaged very well, then I don't want to deal with it being broken. I would rather like take all of the issues on myself from like, hey, like, you know, this is a DS that I bought, and if I mess it up, then that is like, yeah, I'm eating that cost rather than like bugging y'all with like, hey, I broke your 3DS kind of thing. And it's very unlikely that I would do that, but I don't want to have anybody's special edition 3DS, and, you know, obviously it can be reshelled and things, but if you want the serial number on the inside to match the serial number on the outside, we're probably going to have a problem if I end up like messing up the main board or something. So I'd rather not do that, especially with the 3DSs. Especially with the 3DSs because they are very finicky. Okay, so all of those are connected, and we got to do the capture card board. But yeah, between 350 and 400 is the price target I am trying to reach. And that is for a full 3DS. It's Japanese. It has custom firmware on it to unregion lock it because American DSs are very expensive now. And it will have a capture board in it. It's not going to look the absolute prettiest because I'm getting ones that like people are intending to use them for capture card use, and so they don't need to look amazing. So I'd rather save people money. And if that's not something that people are on board with, then feel free to like get them elsewhere. That's just kind of my philosophy with both the DS and the 3DS, is kind of like grabbing DSs that are in perfectly functional condition but maybe don't look like collector's items. And I try to get the best ones I can at the price point that I target, but that's kind of the goal. It's just like reuse DSs that like, you know, give them a new life essentially. Okay, so that's all installed, and then we got to do the put this on, and then we'll be done. And where's my little dongle thing? So zoom out again. Sorry if the camera's been kind of crappy for the rest of this. I haven't been paying as much attention to where the camera's at for some reason. This is the most difficult part from like an assembly perspective because the capture board is like sandwiched in between. It's just adhered and you can kind of like move it around. So I try to cut the case well enough that there's no like finickiness to this, but sometimes with where it's stuck down, it can be a little bit finicky. Okay. There we go. So we got the dongle, kind of like making sure that the capture board's aligned properly. And then we'll put the screws in and then we'll test it. And we'll get back to shiny hunting. Junona Bro, where can you get the modified bottom shelf? Oh, so I've been doing those off stream. Like basically I do the I modify the bottom ones, and they're not beautiful, I would say. The ones that Loopy does, he has like really nice fixtures that he uses to cut them clearly. I've seen a couple of them, but I'm doing it by hand with the Dremel and hand cutters and like little X-Acto knives and stuff. So yeah, it would be nice if somebody would like just make the bottom shells. I wouldn't be surprised if some like a Chinese company knocks off Loopy's design and then like sells the bottom shells that are like properly injection molded with them. Like that's a very typical thing that Chinese companies end up doing. But yeah, right now it's just either modify it yourself or send it into Loopy or somebody else who installs capture cards. You kind of got scammed. What kind of capture card is in it, and why do you feel like you got scammed? Phoenix King Birth, I missed your follow an hour ago. I'm sorry. I don't know. Is the alert box up? I must have just missed it and not been staring at the screen. So if you're still here, thank you for the follow. And if you're not, then still, thank you very much. Okay, so that's all the screws except the battery door. So we'll put it in the battery, put on the battery door, and we'll test it. I feel like I kind of took my time with this last one rather than hurrying through it. So we will get back to shiny hunting soon. No, so one of these is for folks in chat, one person in chat, and then this other one is for anybody. I have a bunch more still of the DS ones. Only 4 out of 20 of the 3DSs are claimed at the moment. So I have a lot of 3DSs. If you want DSs, this one specifically is up for sale. And I have a few more that I have to do still. But I'm probably gonna stop doing the DSs for a bit until I get that like wireless controller prototype working. And then I might do cap cards and the wireless controller prototype installations for people. But yeah. Okay, let's test this guy. So we've got our cable here. And let me put up the screen. Okay, so we've got charge light, which is good sign. Power on. Backlight. Bottom screen, top screen, and we're captured. Okay, so this one's working. And I will get it set up and then we'll do some 6X hunting. Everybody excited for 6X hunting? We'll see how well I can do that this time. But yeah, this blue one's up for grabs. People want that. Contact me on Twitter if you're looking for one. And yeah, I have probably 4 more. I have 4 more, essentially, that still need to be done. And then I'm gonna stop for a while with DSs and just do the 3DSs and then maybe get back to DSs when I have my controller stuff done. 25th, 2022. Piano Bites, thank you. I'm glad that you thought it was cool to watch. I enjoy doing it in general, and so I'm glad that y'all like watching it because it's fun to share with people. If you have any like feedback on any of it, I know my camera, I watch my VODs, so I watch my own VODs even though I don't post them. I found it very useful to watch them back, so I'll be watching for the camera work and stuff, but if you have any suggestions, I appreciate that kind of stuff too. Okay. I'm going to get all of the DSs situated and stuff. But we're basically done there. So we have 2 new working ones. And I'll get my other 4 and we'll do some 6X. Where's my thing? Oh. Put your tools away, kids. It's easier to find them if you do this. Okay. Here's my big stack. Yeah. Yeah, usually people have like just full sets of Pokemon. They have like Pokemon for all the generations. Basically, people have created them in stream avatars. And I was like, well, it seems kind of interesting to, like, I'd like to know everybody's favorite Pokemon, you know, what one they would choose to put at the bottom, but I was kind of like being more specific and creative with it, with the amount of creativity you can actually, like the amount of limited amount of creativity you can have with stream avatars and stuff without like actually making your own sprites. So thanks for that. Yeah. Yeah, I'll keep the avatars after Fossil Week probably, unless it's like too distracting for folks. I don't know if people like it or not, but I kind of like it in some ways. It's cool interaction, I guess. Yeah, I wanted to. One of my ambitious ideas. I've been trying to take a little better care of myself this week because I've been streaming like crazy. One of my ambitious ideas was to add the shiny sprites for these because they don't all have shiny sprites, so I didn't add any of the shiny sprites that people had already created. But I think that's not going to happen this Fossil Week. Maybe next Fossil Week. Okay, let's hide this, and then I'll set these. Oops, that's not the right one. Hide this, and I'll set these up. So, Pokemon, I got 2 other cartridges. This one needs a cartridge, and this one needs a cartridge. And we'll see how efficient this is. Okay, and I need to launch a bunch of instances of the capture software real quick. This is where that prototype that I've been talking about and showing comes in. With the 6x hunting, 6x plus, basically. Okay, so let's get all these turned on. And all the instances of the capture board software. And let's turn all the sounds off. One more sound. That one's off. Okay, cool. Let me switch back, and then we will hide this and this and this, and then show this and this. And then I'll launch all the other capture board capture programs.